Captain Picard. Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
My Readier Room.
Hello and welcome to the Readier Room, the only, longest running, highest quality, and deepest Star Trek The Next Generation rewatch podcast. We don't only rewatch the shows, but we rethink about them. My name is Mitchell Mells, Chief Consultant Services Paramount, and with me is my life partner, Brandon Hobbs. Brandon, how are we doing today on this first day of August?
Oh, hey, Mitch. Didn't hear you come in. I'm just finishing up my latest piece of Trek fan fiction.
Oh, your latest piece of Trek fan fiction, huh? Well, I eagerly await every single one of your releases, like none other. So, boy, am I stoked.
Yes.
What's this one about?
This one's about, well, the Enterprise runs into, he's my newest original character. I guess I'd call him, I don't know, mischievous, irreverent. I think the word that would best describe him is rogue.
Okay, he's roguish?
Yeah, dashing.
Right, so he's kind of like a deep red.
Yeah, exactly. And, the crew of the Enterprise basically gets down on their knees one by one to suck him off the entire time.
Oh, so this is an erotic.
It is.
Now, is this the Enterprise C?
It's the Enterprise E.
Okay.
Which is an alternate universe.
Does the E stand for Enterprise?
Yeah, funny thing. Because the D in TNG, it stands for Denterprise.
Right. That was the dental class ship.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I always knew that you were a creative person, but it seems like you're really taking things to the next level.
Yeah, I'm really trying to up my game, participate in the community a little bit more. It's been a good 15, 20 years since I released my last fanfic to much aplomb.
Much, yes. So where can people reading at home, where can they find this? Is it fanfiction.net, deviantsarts.com?
It's fanfiction.net. It's absolutely fanfiction.net. You can go to www.thereadierroom.com.
Yeah, we'll have a link up.
Yeah. So either of those, really. Yeah,
we always have a bunch of links in our show notes on the website every week, and we'll make sure to get it in there this time. It's really worth checking out. If you're a type that's a voracious reader, or somebody who's just feeling a little randy, there's a lot to appreciate in Brandon's stories.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mitch.
Well, thank you for writing them.
Of course.
But today, you and I are writing our own story, a verbal story of historical account and irreverent opinion about Star Trek. Oh my god.
Wow.
I like Star Trek.
It's okay.
Yeah. That's it. Anyway, so this week we have a question of the week from one of our listeners who sent in a question to be answered on a weekly basis. And this one comes from Tyler in Tasmania. And Tyler asks, hey, hold on a second. I gotta read this one more time. Okay, I'm gonna read this exactly how it's written. And you can't blame me, because this is just what was in the email.
Okay.
This might surprise you. Hey, Mitcho, Brandine, big fan, bigger ensign. I'm coming in with a hot question that's burning a hole in everyone's mind. What season of TNG is the best? Thanks, Space Lords.
Brandine, huh?
Yeah, I think that's another name for an eggplant. So
Is it now?
I believe so. I know that in other places, if you say eggplant, people will look at you a little funny. And I believe Brandine is the word.
You call them Brandines. Well,
Right.
it's funny because that's actually my name on the con circuit. That's my alter ego, Vulcan
Right.
personality. Yeah. Which, you know, I'm wondering if Tyler is kind of an older fan, you know.
He might be tipping his hat a bit about what he
Yeah.
knows and where he's been.
Right, right.
I will say this: I have no explanation for Micho. That seems more like a personal shot at me more than anything else.
Oh, maybe he fat fingered the keyboard.
That's true. That's true. You know, H and O are pretty close together for fat fingers.
Right.
Although I will say, I think Space Lord is another franchise. I'm not quite sure.
Space Lord.
Isn't that
Space
the
Lord.
Who's that Christian guy who played with the Raptors and then went into space? What's his name? He was on that Office. No, it was not The Office, but it was like The Office.
It was like The Office?
Yeah, it wasn't The Office, but it was like The Office.
Like Parks and Rec?
Yeah, yes, that's it. He was on that
Uh-huh.
show, and then he was in the movie with the dinosaurs, and then he was in another movie where where he was
right,
in space.
right. That's God, Guardians of the Universe? Masters of the Universe?
And that was his character, Space Lord, right?
It was Space Lord, yeah.
Okay, so we're getting a little
That
bit
has
of
nothing to do with Star Trek.
No, it's like some cross contamination of
That's weird.
of spacefaring series, but
Maybe he's so old that he's senile.
you know that it would explain a lot. Well,
We're getting there too, Mitch.
oh no, don't remind me. I don't want to be calling people Micho and fat fingering half the length of my keyboard
or Space Lord.
or Space Lord. If I ever call somebody Space Lord, then that's the canary in the coal mine. You know, I'm out of here.
I'll be sure to pull the plug, Mitch.
Please. So I think that the best season of Star Trek: The Next Generation is, from the artistic point of view, is pretty clearly season 7. Everything in the series until that point, had been building up to it, and season 7 is, to me, where we as artists hit our creative stride. There's a lot of interesting ideas and concepts running throughout that season. Things like the Worf-Troy romance, the introduction of the supernatural, and the Beverly Crusher sees a ghost story. That one episode where Data and Picard are wearing these vaguely homosexual masquerade masks.
Yes.
There was a lot going on where we finally had a mastery of Star Trek: The Next Generation as a show, and having mastered the rules of that program, we were able to push the boundaries and push beyond that and explore new, exciting, creative spaces.
Right.
And, you know, not all of those ideas will always necessarily land, but it's better to challenge the audience than it is to kind of give them exactly what they want every single week, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think by season 7, we'd kind of mastered the art of having the show kind of turn around and look at itself in a meta way, which was interesting.
Indeed. And I understand why it wasn't so popular with some fans who just, you know, wanted Data to start defining words when he hears them. But that's just not how creativity works, and I'm happy that we weren't held back by a bunch of chuds that make up our audience.
Yeah, I mean, some people just want to sit down and turn their brains off and watch TV, but you know, that's not what Star Trek is about.
No, never has been, never will be.
Right. You know,
well,
if you want that, you could watch like X-Files or something.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I will say that the X-Files does have a very spooky theme song.
It does. It does. Yeah. I've never felt comfortable with it.
You ever like wake up from a nap and you left the TV on and you just
Mhm.
you're in that delirious state of half awake and
Mhm.
and maybe the X-Files is starting to come on and you hear the do 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 and
Right.
you
No.
just kind
Yeah.
of get scared.
Even worse, it's dark outside, and
Right, right.
these images flash through your mind of one of those gray aliens with a big head knocking on your door.
Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
that same thing might happen in Star Trek, but it would be very silly because the gray aliens
It would be.
would have have exactly one unique cultural trait that you could identify
Right.
immediately and feel
Right.
comfortable with.
And that would be fixing the holodeck.
Yes. Yes. I don't know if I've told you this. I've been developing a theory in retrospect that the entirety of Federation life and culture and technological development revolves entirely around the holodeck, or holodecks as a concept.
Okay.
Because they're certainly treated as if they are the most important fixture of society.
Yeah, they're always approached with this unwarranted reverence, just amazement, even by people who have experienced them before.
Right. And, to give you a preview, we see a little bit of that in this episode too. It's fantastic, and my theory is such that holodecks, being the most important piece of technology in the universe, are the prime motivator for the conflicts we see throughout the show between, for example, Romulans and the Federation. So I don't believe we ever see the Romulans have holodeck technology. So while they have cloaking technology, their inability to have holodecks motivates them to come at the Federation. Now, what's interesting about this is that later on, there's a third force to be contended with that's neither Romulan nor Federation. And I'm blanking on the Cardassians. That's it. There's the Cardassians.
Like Kim?
Like Kim. And the others. But they're the ones who abduct Picard in that one episode. They do have holodeck technology, because there's one episode where Riker is abducted and put into a Cardassian holodeck to...
Right.
Yes. Now, given that, what is the motivation for the Cardassians and the Federation to be at war? I don't know. You would think that with both of them having access to holodecks, they would live in harmony, but it's not the case. So this is a working theory, but it's my theory nonetheless.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I guess we don't really know too much about how the Cardassian holodeck works. I mean, Riker was able to defeat it.
He was, which...
So...
No, to defeat the Federation holodeck, they needed its consent to be defeated in last week's episode.
Right, yeah. They it became sentient and I guess threatened to kill everyone.
Yeah. Which the Cardassian holodeck never did. So maybe they have the inferior holodeck and they want the more powerful.
I think that would make the most sense. And I mean, think about it. You could use a holodeck to make an army.
That's true.
You know, just conjure them up and then suddenly make them real for no reason. Yeah.
Either that, or you somehow dupe the entirety of your opponent's army to enter your holodeck.
Right.
And then they're done.
That's it, yeah.
It's unreal times we're living in, and this gives me some sense of stability.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, it's an interesting theory. Interested to see how it progresses.
I'm going to pay special attention to that, rest assured. And this will be developed in tandem with the show. Yes. We definitely won't forget about it next week. Definitely not. I've never forgotten anything, at least that I can remember. So, thank you, Tyler, for the question. and I hope that solved your confusion about the quality of art and television.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, today we have a new episode to talk about from season 2, which, if I recall correctly, it's the outrageous Okona.
The outrageous Okona.
I see that name and I have to stop myself from pronouncing it incorrectly.
I know. I always want to say Okona.
Right. Which is very annoying, but
it's how the language works, really. When you look at that, you would think, yep, it's Okona. They could have spelled it Okana.
Right. Given that those final 2 syllables have the same vowel sound.
Yes.
It could be just one of those cases where there's a disconnect between the writer's inner voice and the actor's interpretation of the line while reading it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Considering no one on Star Trek can seem to pronounce things correctly.
Right. Well, the problem is that whenever you tried to correct people about this, you always just got mercilessly bullied, no matter who you were.
Right. Yeah. It would be like, what are you, a nerd? Like
exactly.
Sometimes Michael would tell us to stop acting white,
which was very difficult to do for white people. Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of our natural state. So
yeah. I don't know why he would be so aggressively racist.
I think he was just always in character.
Worf is a racist, that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, this episode is I don't even know how to describe it. I have all these thoughts and I'm just kind of I'm stuck right now, but to me, this is one of the worst episodes that I've seen in the series so far, and that's including season 1. This is in the very bottom percentile, and I don't think it's a competency issue, maybe like some of the other bad episodes have, but instead it's just a complete nothing burger. There's just nothing going on in this episode at all.
Yeah. I sort of maybe disagree a little bit. Just because I like the idea. I like the idea because you have so many episodes following this crew, and they're all very proper, right?
Mm.
There's a certain culture to the Federation that this Okona guy brings something different to.
Yes.
He's a rebel, he's a rogue, that kind of thing. And the idea of having a character like this kind of get thrust into the Enterprise crew's lives, I think has the potential to be interesting and funny. And this episode was neither of those things.
Yeah, that's the problem with the episode is not the character of Okona. That's something you can work with in a number of ways. Because you're right, the contrast, there's a very real contrast between him and the Federation crew, the Enterprise crew, in any number of ways. But not only that, it's just a character that is fun to have on screen.
Yes.
So you can do just about any story you wanted to with him. Apparently, almost any story, because if you did this story, it's nothing. And that's mostly because this story is so small scale that there's just very little to happen. And you have to dedicate so much screen time to perhaps the most offensive B-plot I've ever seen.
I think that was really the nail in the coffin for this episode. The B-plot took up too much time, had no relation to anything going on outside of it, and it was completely worthless and honestly annoying.
Yes. The B-plot had neither stakes nor an arc or a story to it, nor did it
right.
have character development if you wanted to take it the other way. It's about
Right.
Data, and Data ends up more or less in the same place that he started.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, we don't get a conclusion to it at all.
no, and I quite like data-centric stories.
Yeah.
So to me, it's very, very strange when something like this is put on the screen and I am just so checked out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It bothered me a lot that so here's the issue is that these fish out of water data stories, I guess, tend to work best, I think, when they're intertwined with a larger conflict that Data is just happens to be involved with.
Right, like Data's learning about human morality, and in doing so, he has to make an ethical choice about the
Yes.
plot or something
Yes.
with stakes.
And I don't think my observation there is at all novel or anything like that. I think we've all kind of figured that out by now, and to pursue a Data story like this it's just so trite.
It was trite
And-
by this point. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not even in retrospect. It's just having watched season 1 and the few episodes before it in season 2. You
Yes.
already feel that this is ground that we've covered because we have.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, we've done the whole Data force laughing at things and trying to understand jokes, and this just feels like 15 minutes of filler.
Which it is.
It is, yeah.
For all intents and purposes. It's embarrassing.
And then-
in a way.
And we're subjected to Joe Piscopo
In Star Trek, of all places.
in Star Trek, yeah. Who actually he did a lot of improv this episode. Which I think maybe a lot of people don't know that. But no one really found him funny. Shocker, I know.
Yeah.
None of the crew found him funny, and this turned out to be a pretty big issue during the first couple of days. If you remember, he'd get up on stage to do his act, and a few minutes in, he'd realize no one was laughing. And he'd just gradually start to get like red in the face, right? And he'd trip over his lines, and ultimately it would just devolve into him like screaming at us, like spitting on us.
Well, he was frothing in his anger.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. He was frothing. Yeah. Telling us that we have no idea what comedy is. It would devolve into him. He would sit down on stage and just start hitting himself in the head. Calling himself stupid. He'd do the stupid.
Right.
And so yeah, needless to say, we we eventually caught on and learned to laugh.
Well, that's
at
the
his
thing.
jokes.
You might be thinking, having watched the episode, that that was the influence for the end of the episode.
Right.
And
right.
That's unfortunate. Well, I don't know, unfortunately, but that's not actually the case. It's just a nice coincidence that what Data ends up experiencing mirrored the real life experiences of the comedian himself, which in a way makes this an incredibly deep script in how it mirrors real life.
Yeah. If you look at it from a meta point of view, it is pretty interesting. Except, I think Piscopo never really came to terms with the fact that he's not funny, whereas Data kind of does.
That's true, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it realize it's not funny.
That is true.
Yeah, I people try to make me realize that a lot.
Oh, come on. They're fighting an uphill battle.
It's mostly because there's very few things that I've realized in my life so far. Now I've realized,
and most of the things you have realized are Trek related.
I was about to say, I realized this podcast from conception to reality. And I think one time I realized that I left my oven on. aside from that, I don't come to very many realizations, but it's okay.
Well, it's only a matter of time until we realize that this podcast is a terrible idea.
Well, that's going to depend on the ensigns.
That is, yes.
As long as they keep the Patreon flowing, I can do any amount of terrible ideas.
Right. Buy the shirts.
Buy the shirts.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the shirts, but the One Riker, One Bridge shirts, huge seller. We ran out of stock, and so sorry about that for everyone who's still trying to buy them. I think we're gonna get new stock in, next week.
Something like that. I know that we're already in contact with the t-shirt company, but it takes some amount of time to get the printers going because there's a queue of other things, but we'll keep you updated on it. We have more new shirts on the way. If you watch this episode, you might have heard the line when they first meet Okona. He's communicating with them over the long distance radio, whatever it is they use, and he says, "Oh, is that a woman I hear?" And that quote is actually going to be on the front of the shirt.
Yeah.
And then on the back of the shirt, it's going to be Pregnant Troy. So look forward to that. Anyway, there's something I wanted to talk about, which I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh yeah, it's the fucking plot. This episode.
Oh, right.
This episode has the first in a planned series of we called them our Shakespeare series of episodes, and if you're
shit, that's right.
If you're at all vaguely familiar with this episode, you know that this plot bears a strong resemblance to Romeo and Juliet, which is a story about two feuding families that have star-crossed lovers of their young children, and the consequences of that are felt. Now, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, I realize, especially for the Star Trek audience. So, Romeo and Juliet is a play that was written by Shakespeare. And if you don't know what that is, a play is a live production. It's kind of like a TV show, but instead of being on a screen, it's done live on a stage in a theater. And for anybody at home,
which you buy tickets for,
right,
and you sit in the seats in front of the stage.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, a theater is a live building, like an actual place that you go to watch entertainment with other people around you. And for any Trek fans out there who might not know, people are human beings like you and I that comprise the society that you've probably opted out of if you're listening to this podcast.
Wow, couldn't have said it better myself. Right.
So it's quite a layered idea. But yeah, we had a whole series of these scripts planned. I remember the one in particular where in the episode Picard was going to die, and then Data would see Picard's ghost appear to him, and it would motivate this whole revenge plot, which is another one of Shakespeare's plays, if you're unfamiliar. And then by the end, Picard would come back, and it'd be this whole thing.
Right.
But our plans, they kind of got cut off by the writer's strike, and then also nobody was really comfortable with the iambic pentameter. It was very difficult for our actors to keep that meter up for it.
Yeah, well, there is a sophistication to it that is definitely lost on Trek, or at least the cast of early TNG.
Indeed. I remember we tried to organize a field trip for our principal cast to go see a Shakespeare production, and Frakes just in the audience, he just kept loudly yawning throughout the entire show. I don't know where he got it, but he brought in popcorn and was just kind of chucking it around the theater, put his feet up on the seat. It was a whole, can't take him anywhere.
Yeah, Patrick wasn't happy with that.
No. Patrick's
I
a
don't think anyone
sophisticated
was.
guy. He likes his Shakespeare, his Earl Grey
he
tea.
can actually do it.
Yes.
So yeah, and I remember marketing was particularly bummed about dropping this idea because we were going to release a limited VHS for the holiday season. Just Star Trek TNG, the Shakespeare series.
Right.
I remember a few of us were really excited about that, and of course it didn't take off.
Speaking of taking off, I remember we had some flying discs made with a picture of the Enterprise on them and the text, "Wherefore art thou, Enterprise D?"
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't really release those once the plans fell through.
Yeah, it becomes kind of a non sequitur at that point.
Exactly. So
it's a shame. I wonder where those all are now.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, had this been season 7, I think we would have been comfortable enough, and everybody would have been comfortable enough to make that happen, in our more art house years. But in season 2, we didn't have nearly the level of sophistication by most of our cast.
Right.
Yeah, they say that actors are creative people. Nah.
No,
not really. They're like dancers, or models. They shouldn't, and they don't have any real input. You just tell them what to do.
Yeah. All the creativity tends to come down to people like you and me. They're the ones. We are the ones who kind of save these productions.
Exactly. So when people at home, when they watch the credits of TV shows and movies, they look for the names in the big text, but you really have to wait 2-3 minutes after that to really see the true heroes of production in the credits.
Yeah, definitely.
Got a little heated.
Well, let's calm down by talking about Okona some more.
Oh, I love talking about Okona.
Yeah, that'll make you feel better.
I'm feeling better already once we have a dedicated rogue to talk about.
So Okona himself, played by Billy Campbell, who actually auditioned for Riker.
I could see that. And you know what? I'm just going to say it. That probably would have been a better choice.
You think so?
What does Frakes bring to the role? A beard?
I don't know. A little more edge, I think.
I don't really... It's so difficult for me to see Frakes as Riker, which is to say that he's just kind of there saying lines. He's not particularly charming or threatening or imposing, whatever the scene calls for. He's just kind of an actor.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been bad.
Well, I think it would have just been better, just straight up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe Jonathan Frakes is taller, I believe. He's got that going.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, so I guess you and I are going to have different opinions on Billy's performance this episode because I mean, and of course he's said this himself, but the lines written for him were god awful, and
that's true.
He didn't do anything to make them not sound awkward, which I don't blame him for per se, but it wasn't a very good performance, I think.
Well, I agree that the dialogue around his character was very not good. However, given what he was written to be, which, again, a rogue, perhaps a charming one, I could buy that just by the physicality of his performance before you even enter the dialogue.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point.
And that's what I really like about it. He's just very convincing in that sort of role. And
right.
Riker often takes on that kind of role in the scripts. You know, he's always the one seducing women. He's kind of in the mix of the social situations, and
right.
Even with the more brash nature of Riker, Okona in this episode, I really like the moment where he's talking to Picard, and they're kind of deciding what to do about the whole thing, and he's like, I'm just gonna leave the ship, and Picard tells him, oh, you know, they'll catch up to you, they're right there, you're gonna die. He's like, you know, I'll worry about myself, Picard, I got this. And it's a nice, sincere, it feels sincere as a show of confidence for, you know, this kind of arrogant, competent but arrogant guy. And that's exactly the energy that Riker usually has. I don't know, I think it would have been a really good choice.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you're kind of convincing me, because it would have been a great foil to Picard as well, to have Billy Campbell be his first officer, right?
Plus, he can make more faces than a half-cocked single eyebrow.
Right. The twitching eyelid. Yes, that is true. His range is certainly wider.
Now, we would have lost the trombone.
Yes, which was integral.
It was,
to be fair.
A real tromboner.
So, well, I don't know if I have anything else to say about Okona, really. I mean, in terms of, you know, his place in this episode, or the performance or whatever.
Well, here's the thing about his place in the episode. His inclusion in the plot, to me, is very strange. Based on the fact that I don't quite understand why he had to be written into this episode. What does he bring to it? Because as it turns out, he's almost a complete non-actor in the actual story.
Well, no, yeah, he's a plot device.
Right. But the story starts, and you think, oh, he's a fugitive, he's a criminal. When not really, he's not at all responsible for the crimes he's being accused of. And he doesn't do much to solve the problem that's presented. It's more of by virtue of the Enterprise bringing these feuding parties together to reach a conclusion. And the kids just kind of sorted out themselves once given the opportunity.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and I guess this character's existence kind of boils down to a weird kind of wish fulfillment.
Yeah, I buy that.
Whoever was writing this thought that they were really placing themselves into this role. You know, you have this character come aboard. He has sex with every woman on the Enterprise. He teaches Data, the resident autist, how to interact with people as Data kind of stands there and watches him make out with a woman. It's all very yeah. It's just very on the nose for sure.
Well, that's all due to the origin of this, and I think that the way you describe it, it kind of feels like a child having a reverence for his cool older brother. It's like, wow, yeah. He's got a girlfriend and they're making out, and he's, you know, when Dad tells him to go to bed, he doesn't. He's like, wow,
right.
Which is kind of what happens with one of the writers who conceived the character initially. When that writer was a kid himself, he went to a Star Trek convention, and I guess his brother chaperoned him. I don't know the story so well, but what happened was that his brother, just who didn't give a shit about Star Trek, kind of was just attending the convention by proxy, and was just the coolest guy there. He didn't give a shit about Star Trek or the convention events or anything. He was just there to watch his younger brother and hit on women. And
yeah, you know, like any normal person.
Exactly. That's just what you do at conventions. And seeing somebody with no regard for Trek etiquette, was a dynamic that writer wanted to explore, and that's kind of what Okona does. He comes in and he's beholden to nothing about the Enterprise's culture or norms or mores,
Right.
which is what makes him an interesting aspect of this episode. There's too many times where every single culture or character seems to operate on the same wavelength as the Enterprise, and that's just not very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Okona is the best part of this episode by a large margin.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I can't really disagree with that. And I mean, it's funny you bring up cons, because I think a lot of people, it became obvious that a lot of people thought the same way you do. And this all kind of comes full circle where, like 4 or 5 years after this episode aired, there was this huge increase in Okona cosplayers.
Right.
Right?
We were toying with the idea of advertising our own con for OkanaCon.
Yes.
To celebrate this culture. Right.
Yeah, it became a huge thing. I mean, so the people on the regular con circuits, we called it the Billy Boom. It got to the point where basically every single Trek con was headlining contests to judge, which Okona was the most outrageous.
Go ahead.
No, by all means.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if anyone in the audience has ever been to these kind of convention costume contests, but there's always a moment where the entrants will kind of come up on stage, present their look to everybody, and it's a growing culture where they will do like a very brief bit of performance or strike a pose while they're up there, just something cool. And the Okona guys and some of the Okona girls, everybody was getting in on it. They really took that as an opportunity to showcase their rogue spirit, their party spirit, and
certainly
it led to some really, really outrageous acts, from like pushing over the podiums that were up there, like downing a bunch of alcohol on stage, or anything that you would think a rogue would do. They did it in hopes of kind of securing the victory of the Okona cosplay contest.
We had a couple of people just take their costume off entirely once they got up there.
I remember tons of people brought up partners cosplaying as that one ensign working the teleporter, the transporter,
right?
And they would just make out.
Oh god, there. Yeah. Those got a little dicey sometimes.
Well, you really started to feel like Data in that moment, where you're just watching this bizarrely intimate moment unfold, and you just feel kind of uncomfortable because you don't get it, because human emotion and romance elude you.
Yeah. That is probably the typical experience as a Trek con goer. But when it comes to the costume, actually, like just as an interesting little tidbit here, because this character was so popular, Okona's vest became probably the most sought after Star Trek outfit, right? Star Trek costume. And a huge black market kind of opened for fake reproductions of this thing. And to this day we still don't know where the original article is. It's kind of become the stuff of legend, really. And I think that
no, go ahead.
I just think that that really does speak to how much people love this character.
Indeed. And it's funny because the true thing could be right in front of us, and we would never know it if someone just wore it to the convention. How would we distinguish it from all of the reproductions that are out there? It's impossible.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's at the point where you just assume it's fake. It has to be. Right. So, anyone could have it at this point. I don't think we're ever going to find it.
No. We have our top men looking, but
yeah.
Very unlikely.
And our bottom men.
Indeed. They make good teams together.
But Okona is actually going to be back. Billy Campbell is going to be back in that new Star Trek show for children.
Picard?
No, the other one for children. Star Trek
Baby Picard?
Prodigy. Star Trek Prodigy. He's going to be making an appearance in that.
Ah, okay.
So,
Now,
yeah.
he doesn't strike me as a very child-friendly character, because it seems as though a lot of what he is good for is fornicating.
Yes. Well, maybe we'll see that he's kind of evolved, as a person, because he's old now.
Mm. Old and in the way.
Yeah. You lose all of your sexual market value once you hit like 50 or so.
Very sad, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that didn't happen to us, but
no,
for most people it does.
Sometimes you age like wine, and sometimes you age like bad wine.
Yep. That is what they say. So,
well, be sure to tune into Star Trek Babies to see how sexually alluring Okona still is.
I guess if we're done with Okona for the time being,
are we?
We should. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything more to say about him right now?
No, because nothing happens with Okona in this episode.
Right, exactly. So I think I want to move over to the B plot for a little bit here.
I hate the B plot. This is the worst. This is the most insulting thing to my intelligence that I've ever experienced thus far in Star Trek. I was so angry watching this. I sent you a message while I was watching this episode that, in retrospect, is kind of esoteric, but it perfectly encapsulates how I felt in the moment, where I felt like I was trapped in this episode. It was just an ongoing mess where I'm somehow halfway into it, but it feels like I'm a minute into it because so little has happened. And surely there must be another hour's worth of content to deliver any kind of story. And it plays with your perception of time and reality and space, and it's so bad. It's so bad. And where does it start? It starts with Data and Whoopi Goldberg. What is her name?
Guinan,
that's right. And talking about humor. And Data realizes he doesn't know what's funny, or maybe he's in the
so that's not where it starts. Okona starts it.
Yes. No, I feel like there's something before that. Not with Guinan, you're right, but on the bridge, I feel like it's precipitated by some exchange there, and then...
I don't think it is. I think Okona literally just says, "Oh, you don't understand jokes?
What are you, some kind of robot?
What are you, autistic?"
And Data said, does not compute.
yeah, like a like a Lost in Space robot. He stands there just like kind of moving his C-3PO arms up and down, and yeah.
I hope yes, it's just so the audience at home knows that's exactly the movement I was doing to reinforce that joke. We're all on the same wavelength here.
But speaking of moving arms, there's something
where's
that
this
Data
going?
does a lot this episode.
Okay. I loved that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I really did.
Yeah.
That, like, gesticulating with the cigar.
Right.
I don't know why I thought that was so funny, but I did.
It's funny. It's some nice kind of visual comedy.
It is.
Which kind of I mean it's the only funny thing that really happens.
Yeah. I buy that. But there's I'm thinking about it now. I don't think about anything until we start recording. It's kind of interesting to me. The quality of the humor itself. Obviously, as a story, it fails completely because nothing happens and there's no stakes or development. But if I were to just evaluate this and think, well, are there enjoyable comedic moments? I think there kind of are. It's like that. I enjoy, for example, Data goes after he first goes to the holodeck. He tries to learn about comedy. Then he goes to Guinan in 10 Forward and tests out his material, and that's when he starts like doing that thing. And that whole sequence I kind of enjoyed.
Sure. I took umbrage with, and this may be getting a little bit off topic, but we can bring it back around. I took umbrage with, kind of my favorite thing to complain about, where Data looks up who the funniest comedian is.
Oh, and he finds
he lands on a 23rd century comedian, and I'm like, oh, great, awesome. And then, of course, he decides to go with a 20th century comedian, namely Joe Piscopo, which, of course. But when you really think about it, comedy evolves so quickly. There's no way someone in the time that Star Trek The Next Generation is set, there's no way that someone would find 80s comedy to be funny. On top of that, Guinan has to have probably the most fucked up sense of humor of all time. I mean, when you think about it, given everything she knows and how much she's privy to.
Right. Humor is contextual, right? And what is Guinan's context for finding things funny?
Right, it's got to be something we can't even begin to understand.
Yeah. There's a lot to say about this whole thing. So that's something. 2, the idea that the reason Data rejects the 23rd century comic is because their comedy is inherently based on, I think it was quantum mechanics.
Yes.
Which is such a stupid concept when you think about it.
Yep.
The idea that, it's the future, so everybody's leisure time is intrinsically entwined with high-level science.
Right, definitely. Yeah, that pissed me off, too.
It's just dumb.
So, I mean... So...
the Guinan being a pizza ruiner?
A pizza ruiner?
Yes, she says, I'm annoyed.
Oh.
Which Data took some time to understand that joke, and I'm kind of with him if the idea is that Noid is short for humanoid.
Yes, I did not find that...
What the hell?
At all obvious, or funny, of course.
No, definitely not.
So I don't blame Data for not laughing at that. That's for sure.
I'm annoyed. And it's a great joke when they had to explain it. Not, for Data, but by proxy for the audience.
Right. So this all culminates in Data standing up on a holodeck stage, doing a comedy routine, which is entirely disjointed as the fake crowd laughs at him, like raising his hands or whatever.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we're supposed to find it funny.
We initially wrote a lot of actually humorous jokes for that sequence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of editing that goes on in television, but the idea was that we would kind of make a lot of jokes the audience are familiar with, put a Trek bent on them and make it a little funnier. Data would have an overtly comedic set and kind of feel a success. And the tone of that changed, but we still have a lot of cut footage of Data just doing a stand-up set. Now, what I did was I went and I tracked this down and I wrote down some of the jokes because God knows I didn't remember them. But I'll do my own set for you, and
all right,
let's see if I can get a reaction. All right. I just flew in from the neutral zone, and boy, are my arms tired.
Oh.
All right, when is a transporter not a transporter? When it's ajar. All right, maybe that one's not so good. Why did the Ferengi cross the road? To make a sail on the other side.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you know, we all appreciate some race-based humor.
There was a whole extended Who's in the holodeck routine between Data and Worf, who he would have recruited to help him.
All right.
This one's pretty good. What's the difference between a Klingon warrior and my wife? A Klingon warrior dies with honor.
That one seals it. That's a great one.
The problem,
relatable.
I think the problem was that with the audience laughing, like the actual television audience, it's very difficult to have Data learn any lesson, so to speak. So, once the director had kind of chosen the tone he wanted, an overtly hilarious stand-up set like this wouldn't have flown.
Yeah, that's fair.
But if you get the DVD or the Blu-ray, you should be able to see this footage.
Oh, really? It's on the extras?
I think so.
Huh. I don't remember any of this.
Well,
I wanted to point out some, a kind of transphobic line.
Yes, I remember this.
Tip O'Neill in a dress.
Yes.
What's up with that?
It's strange to me because not only is that incredibly transphobic, but it's a very dated joke, and it's dated partly because it's insensitivity, but also you show that to a young Trek fan today, they don't know Tip O'Neill.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you know what? You're right. There's a lot surrounding this B plot that is completely lost to time. If you want to experience it in context. There's no one who's going to be watching it these days who even knows who Joe Piscopo is.
That's the thing. When he shows up, your reaction is that this looks like a pastiche of a comedian rather than an actual funny, successful comedian. And you don't know if Data's kind of getting bad information. Like his holodeck gave him a hack comedian. Right.
And that's half of the joke, I guess, to begin with, is the presence of an actual comedian in this episode. I mean, it's the meta aspect of it that is a lot of the reason it doesn't work.
Now, is this the first instance of the holodeck being used to shuttle in a celebrity guest?
I think so.
Because this happens later on. We had Stephen Hawking on the show, for example.
Right.
But I believe this is the first time.
It is the first time.
Well, I could have done without it.
Yeah, definitely.
Not just because the quality of the story, like let's say this is reworked to better fit the plot and it's not extremely irrelevant. I still don't think you gain all that much by having a just a random celebrity cameo for no reason.
No, definitely not. And especially with celebrity in scare quotes.
You know what would have been a good line? If Data is configuring the holodeck and it loads up Joe Piscopo, and Data gets this wry smirk on his face, and he's like, comedy and mullets seldom go together.
That would have been a good line. I agree. That should have been in the script. So while Data is learning how to be funny,
a lifelong endeavor.
We have Okona gallivanting around the ship, sleeping with every woman.
Which they make a point to point out.
Oh yeah, several times.
Worf comes in. Okona's been spotted in 3 different quarters, and then they just find him immediately.
Yes. Oh yeah. Worf goes to pick him up, and he's making out with some female crew member.
Some floozy.
And actually, here's something a lot of people miss with that scene. It's something that threw me off when we were rewatching this. So when Worf goes to grab Okona and take him to the bridge, right? He goes to that female crew member's room. Okona's in there like trying to make out with her, and Worf's like, "You're coming with me, right?" And Okona walks up to him, kind of squares up. Things are about to get heated, confrontational, right? And Worf replies, "I'd like that."
Yeah,
Okona gives him a meaningful look, and Worf just says, "I'd like that."
It's weird because it feels like a line of dialogue is missing.
Yes, and wouldn't you know, a line of dialogue is missing. This was completely changed in editing, actually, because Bill had a line right before Michael's where Okona was meant to proposition Worf for a threesome. And then, of course, Worf would say, "I'd like that." For whatever reason, this line got cut, and I guess now we're just supposed to like infer this.
I think
as an audience,
the overt interracial homosexuality was a little bit too much for the time.
Yes, and I was actually going to kind of posit the same thing in that, I mean, clearly you can already see from Tip O'Neill in a dress, we were not exactly LGBTQ friendly.
No.
At this point, or at least not as much as we would have liked to say we were.
Well, we were L friendly.
Yeah, we're still pretty L friendly.
Right. But everything else was a bridge too far.
Right. Yes, and of course, as you said, especially when it was interracial.
Exactly.
So it was just kind of the right combination of all the wrong things there. So which is a shame.
Here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a little something for you. So Worf, as we see in season 1 episode, where that Q episode where Riker becomes a Q-like guy, the Klingon experience of sex is very different from what humans might know. Remember there was that battle scene on the bridge? Yep. And with that in mind, how would Worf approach a threesome with two humans? Would he try to take them on 2-on-1 in a battle? Is that how he has sex with Troy later on in the series?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is an element, right, of physical conquest.
Right.
You have to beat them up first.
Worf, for Klingons, they have to fight back, but ultimately fail.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which, we caught a lot of flack for when people perceived it as, rape apologetics. But it's not... It's a different culture, and it's not something that we can judge by our culture's standards.
Right. Morality is subjective.
Exactly.
It always has been, it always will be. You can't say, I mean, even in real life, you can't look at a different culture and say, they sacrifice young women to the sun god, so they must be bad. I mean, no, it just doesn't work.
No. If they're going to respect our culture, we have to respect theirs. Right.
So, we were really kind of doing the legwork with Worf, especially in terms of kind of building up cultural and religious tolerance in real life.
Now,
especially with Muslims.
It's an interesting challenge because, Alexander, Worf's half Klingon son, is eventually introduced. He's full Klingon, I think. Well,
he's full Klingon.
Worf's son.
He might be a quarter Klingon or a quarter human.
Interesting. No quarter. So, what's the struggle of those two characters has always been Alexander accepting his ancestry and his father's traditions, where we're breaching the subject of religious and cultural acceptance and bridging cultures with Worf, only for it to be kind of undercut by his own son, who doesn't want to partake in Klingon tradition of various kinds.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting concept, I believe.
It definitely is. It's definitely something that I think was one of the more worthwhile things we explored.
Trek has a lot of opportunities for that, for those more heady things, but they kind of come in the unlikeliest of places. Nobody looks at Worf and thinks, yeah, this is going to be the character through which sensitive cultural topics are covered. You know, they look at Worf and they think, oh, they let a black man on television. So it's
right.
It's always surprising where you get these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is, and I mean, we were really good at kind of subverting expectations, pretty consistently. So, yeah. So the end of this episode.
I'm trying to think.
Or
what
I guess
happens.
the final 10-15 minutes of it.
I guess we should talk about what the conflict is, because we mentioned it being vaguely Romeo and Juliet-esque.
Yeah.
So there's
Juliet-esque.
Okona is a fugitive wanted by two distinct entities, both of them living on neighboring planets. They're both humanoid races, and one of them insists that Okona impregnated his daughter, and destroying her honor and his family's honor, and thus he must marry her to preserve it. And
a little anachronistic, huh?
Yeah, it's a pretty old-timey concept. Oh, my daughter's chastity, I have to protect it.
Yeah.
Pretty misogynistic. It was almost cut from the script, but I think Frakes convinced us to keep it in by virtue of, finally having a relatable antagonist for one of the stories.
Yes.
Which made sense. Most of our antagonists are like skin of evil, nothing to latch onto.
Right. I mean, I think we all can kind of relate to. I mean, it's a timeless issue, having your daughter impregnated by
a rogue.
A rogue, an unmentionable,
right?
And then just having them kind of leave. Yeah.
Eat, shoots, and leaves.
Yeah.
So
that is what they do.
That's one half of the parties. The other half is a man and his son whose family heirloom, like a crown jewel, was supposedly stolen by Okona. And Okona, having been picked up by the Enterprise, is now under their custody, and the Enterprise has to decide what to do. Do they release him? Do they release him to only one of these people who both want to prosecute him for different reasons?
Mm-hmm.
What happens? And Okona insists on his innocence throughout all this. He didn't do either of those things. And that's basically it. And then the conclusion happens.
Yeah. The conclusion being that it was actually the two kids all along, and
scare quotes around the word kids.
Yeah. Yes. And unlike Romeo and Juliet, they basically solve generations of conflict by falling in love with each other.
Right. It is not a tragic story. It is a blithely hopeful and optimistic story.
Who knew that the conflict between these two planets could be solved by two kids marrying each other?
Teen pregnancy?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then the fathers are standing behind them saying, "No, you'll live on my planet." Kind of bickering like in-laws.
Right. A complete 180 from the utter disgust they felt for one another 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, almost apropos of nothing.
Apropos of nothing. Now, it's worth mentioning that the feud between these planets is set up to be so big that for those two kids to even see each other, Okona has to smuggle one of them into the other's planet. It's so difficult to get between them. Like, the hate is so strong. And then, you get knocked up and nobody cares about that anymore. Generations worth of interplanet strife.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Women are important.
Indeed. Children are the future.
Yes, they are.
Now, it's weird to me that Okona, his solution is to take the blame for all this, to protect the kids from the consequences of their actions. So he's like, I impregnated her. And it's this weird thing, weird dynamic to have like a soon-to-be married couple, some other guy insisting that he had sex with the wife. And the reactions to this are kind of all over the place, where she's like, yes, he did have sex with me.
Yes.
He is the father. And you would think that this would be something that just, for the couple, that they could not abide by, that they would just be much more principled than that. And the guy he sticks up. He's like, no, you didn't stick your penis into her. I did. It's me. I did this. But the wife, who's vaguely angry with her fiance, just tries to go by that story of Okona being the father.
She's ready to hop right on Okona.
Yeah, which doesn't bode well for their future.
That certainly doesn't. Yeah, it was just it felt like a little bit more than corroborating a story for the sake of, saving lives. Right. And more like she actually wanted Okona all along. Which is understandable. He's Okona.
He is Okona. What were the stakes, though? Let's say that everything is just discovered. The two fathers find out about this illicit relationship. What's even going to happen?
Well, the stakes I think were implied to be that, the guy with the daughter, he would find it to be a dishonor. Go to war with the guy who has the son.
Well, here's the thing, though. His solution to his daughter being deflowered is to get this rogue, mercenary type guy to just marry his daughter.
Yeah, but at least Okona is not, the family of the planet that you've hated for so long.
Yeah, but I assume that a lot of the motivation here is coming from saving face in society and stations within that society. So to have, okay, my daughter's marrying this space outlaw guy seems also like a non-starter for somebody who would uphold their honor like this. Whereas, okay, well, my daughter's going to marry a nobleman seems a bit more palatable. I don't know. It doesn't.
Well, yeah, sure.
It just doesn't feel like a very consequential story to begin with. That when it gets solved, there's no relief because what even was?
There's no tension.
Yeah, exactly.
The potential consequences are not laid bare well enough, or really at all. So yes, I do agree with you.
In fact, it's more or less just silly. It's presented as being an annoyance that the Enterprise crew even has to deal with this. They bring up both of the parties on the view screen at the same time, and they're arguing amongst themselves, and Picard's like, I don't give a shit, just mute the call.
Right. And they expressly make a point to tell you that their ships can't do anything to the Enterprise.
Right. No tension. Absolutely zero tension.
It's very weird.
I thought it was going to go in a way where the Enterprise would have to deal with, like, do we kill these guys? I mean, we could just obliterate them.
Right. That would make sense.
And instead, there was nothing.
There's nothing. Yeah, you're right. It is silly. I don't know. It is just a nothing episode when it comes down to it.
A nothing burger, as I
A nothing burger.
as I started out saying.
I misused your terminology.
That's okay. That's okay. You know what a nothing burger is? It's
a burger made of nothing.
Well, it's 2 buns with nothing in between.
So we've got 2 buns with nothing in between for this episode.
Right. It's a that's how I would describe an ass. And this episode is ass.
Yeah, it sucks. But the unfortunate thing is that I would almost recommend people watch it.
Yeah?
Just for Okona.
I mean, it's nice to be in the cultural know amongst the Star Trek fandom about who Okona is and what's the deal there. And he is an enjoyable character, but, you know, we're all gonna die one day, and 40 minutes is a long time.
Yeah. I guess. It's just, I feel like it's such a integral part of Trek culture to hate on this episode that you're missing out by not watching it.
I mean, I guess I can buy that, assuming you're going to get some amount of joy riffing on this with your friends after the fact, or
right.
You know, randos on Twitter, whatever, wherever you get your Trek discourse.
It's bad, but it's not quite boring. It is boring to a degree, but it's not as bad as I think some other episodes have been in that vein.
You know what? I think you're right, and I think that while I don't think it's a good episode, my over the course of our discussion, my opinion has risen a little bit, where I'm not putting it at the very bottom of the list.
Yeah.
For whatever good that is, but yes, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I will never watch this episode again. But
if you can help it.
If I can help it. You know, how many times have I said that about episodes we've already rewatched for this podcast? But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, the fact that there are at least 1 or 2 moments or elements that I regard fondly in retrospect intrinsically means it can't be the worst.
Can't be the worst, right? I particularly enjoyed this line from Data where he says, if you put funny teeth in your mouth and jump around like an idiot, that is considered funny. I thought that was cute.
That is pretty funny. Let me ask you this. How do you feel about Take My Wharf, please?
Yes, that was, I mean, what can I say? It's probably the funniest line in the episode.
Were you like me, which is to say non-catatonic, and as soon as they introduced the son, the daughter and the son of the 2 feuding parties, that you instantly knew exactly what was going to happen for the rest of the episode?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's very, very obvious. I mean, setting aside the fact that we kind of knew to begin with, since, you know,
yes,
we worked on it all those years ago, you do forget things, to be fair.
Well, that's what I'm hearkening back to that time, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, well, absolutely, yeah.
You know, yes, we're working production, but everybody has that moment where you flip through the script for the first time. And,
right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. It's very, very obvious what they're doing.
I thought that in this episode, Riker and Picard have various moments of being oddly arrogant for no reason. Like they are very clearly above these people's entire lives. And something that is of grave importance to them, they just have no Riker and Picard have no care for.
Right.
They just
because they're like technologically inferior.
Right. They just come across as like gods to these ants, and they're like, I guess right. I'll indulge your time.
Totally.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
It's happened.
Although I don't think it was that bad.
It wasn't that bad, but the attitude has happened close in these first few seasons a few times, and
Yes.
it's just annoying to watch. I think I don't like seeing these characters act so out of character.
I agree.
For how I know them, it's not. It's never a bit of comedy to me. It's always, it takes me out of things more than anything else.
Yes. Yep, I have to agree with that one. We didn't get any Pulaski this episode.
No, not everybody could be in every episode, unfortunately. But it takes them so long to get Gates into the makeup.
Yeah,
you can't do that every day.
No, that would have been. She needed a break. That's for sure.
Any closing thoughts on this episode?
Well, I think we've said it all.
Boy, are my arms tired.
I do have a question for you this week, though.
I'm in.
All right. So I'll be reading from the script.
Okay. Like our true actor.
This is a description of a character in this episode, and you're going to tell me who it is. Okay?
Good lord.
So here's the description. Everything she has two of are perfectly matched, coordinated, and move with a wonderful grace that is called woman.
Did Barry Manilow write this? Wait, okay, say that one more time.
Okay. Everything she has two of are perfectly matched, coordinated, and move with a wonderful grace that is called woman.
This is astounding to me. Let me think. Who are the women in this episode? I instantly, the dark horse pick is coming to my mind, and I'm like, is this Guinan? There's no way. That would certainly be the funniest answer.
It would be,
but I don't think it's true. And I think the obvious answer is the daughter character. First of all, I can't think of anybody who has two of anything that are coordinated, but if I were to think of who they would try to write something flowery for, I would think it was her. No.
Right.
No. You know what? Because we see the inside of that transporter ensign's room, that maybe there's an opportunity to see her coordination of two things. Her Noah's Ark. I'm gonna say it's that ensign that Okona hits on as soon as he gets into the transporter room. The
transporter room girl?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yes! Oh.
That is correct. That is B.G. Robinson, the transporter girl. Fun fact, her interests include surrealist paintings, hang gliding, and mystery hollow programs.
Is everybody in this universe interested in mystery hollow programs? Has that overtaken the internet as the primary form of entertainment?
It's the big thing.
Unreal. I'm kind of angry about that, to be honest.
I mean, congratulations for getting it right.
It's overriding my joy of answering that correctly. That was now that was some deductive reasoning.
Yes, that could have been a mystery hollow program in itself. And you were the pro.
Oh my god. I'm riding a high. I'm gonna carry the streak forward. It's always the highlight of my week when I get one of these right, and it's always a crushing blow to my already dire self-esteem when I get one of them wrong.
Well, you can sleep tight this week.
Yes, I don't have to go lay in bed tonight and be like, stupid.
Yeah, pull a Joe Piscopo.
Exactly. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this episode of the Readier Room. You can join us next week when we talk about more Star Trek if you want, and if you don't want to, maybe you can do something more fulfilling with your life. But until then, everybody, please stay ready.
The troublesome little man-child.
Consider that in the history of many worlds, there have always been disposable creatures.
told him to mind his own damn business.
When I stroke the beard thusly, do I not appear more intellectual?
Computer! Freeze program.
It's not a promising beginning.